Hey guys, let's do some science. Are you tired of people laughing at you because you just can't science? Well, be tired no more. Today, we are going to science, physics style, with... Today, we will be covering physics and car safety. Let's start with the basics. Professor Links? Sir Isaac Newton created 3 laws of motion. Today, we will be covering the first 2 through car safety. The first law of Newton states an object at rest will remain at rest, and an object in motion will remain in motion unless an outside force is applied. This is the law of inertia. Inertia is a property of mass resistant to change. The greater the mass, the more resistant it is to change its starting or stopping movement. This actually reminds me of a great story when I was just a mere young lass walking down the street when all of a sudden yeah, that's great and all, but we still can't science.
Do you know what you need?
What?
An example.
The law of inertia is commonly experienced when riding in cars and trucks, which demonstrate the tendency of moving objects to continue moving is a common cause for a variety of vehicle-related injuries. For instance, the collision of a car with an unbalanced force, such as a truck, another car, road sign, tree, dinosaur, or even a wall. The abrupt contact forces a car to decelerate to a rest suddenly. Now, any person in the car will also be decelerated to a rest if they are wearing a seatbelt. They would be held in the car via a seatbelt, which will keep you within the confines and safety of the car, because then, in essence, you share the same state of motion as a car. You stop when it does. But if you aren't wearing a seatbelt, then it's out the windshield, through the air, and into the tree for you, because then you don't share the same state of motion as the car anymore. The same applies for holding onto the rails in a metro, bus, or a train. But Viral, what about airbags? Great question, random viewer. A common mistake people make is that they think that an airbag alone will be able to save them. Newton's second law of motion states that acceleration is produced when a force acts on a mass. The greater the mass, the greater the amount of force needed to accelerate the object. In order to stop the passenger's momentum, it needs to be acted upon by an outside force. For example, an airbag. Without that, the outside force would either be the windshield or the steering wheel. Ouch. An airbag would obviously be the safer option. But the common mistake people make here is that they think that the airbags would be deployed as soon as they crash. They are only deployed when the car is moving at around 6 kilometers per hour or less. So unless you are driving at 6 kilometers per hour, the airbags won't inflate. You also need to remember that without the seatbelt, you are essentially being flung forward. Otherwise, it's gonna hurt a lot. Which is why, kids, even though airbags are good, seatbelts are better, and you should rely on both to achieve optimum safety for you and your family. She's so stupid. Seatbelts are lame. I'm not wearing one. Come on, honey, let's go to the mall.
But Daddy, don't you need your seatbelt?
This whole thing? No, it's very silly. They're not very important anyways.
Yay!
Yay! Let's see all the things wrong with this scenario. Sure, you may have never gotten into a car accident in your life, but that doesn't mean your child won't either. That's impossible. The impression you leave on your child is that following road safety regulations is silly and unimportant. When they're older, they won't follow essential road safety guidelines either. And if they were to get into a car accident, instead of getting a minor injury, which is what they would have gotten if they were wearing a seatbelt, they could get seriously injured, and the lack of seatbelt could even cause deaths. 63% of people killed in a vehicle-related accident are not wearing a seatbelt. A statistical graph created in 2012 Utah shows that 34% of people killed or seriously injured in vehicle-related accidents were not wearing a seatbelt, compared to the 15% of people who were only injured and saved because they were wearing seatbelts. This also leads to the social factor of the implications after the accident has taken place. Not only are you being faced with the possible death of a loved one that can be emotionally scarring and tragic, and could also cause you a lot of grief, it could also possibly lead to a more emotional destruction and your family possibly being torn apart. All that could have been avoided by simply wearing your seatbelt. A car accident can happen to anyone. Your mom, dad, son, daughter, brother, or even your sister. It can take away one or even more members of your family from you. Not only this, but in an event of an accident, it can also be heavy on your wallet and income economically. The damages that have to be paid for buying another car, and the medical fees to paid for your family member's health. Also, if someone in your family was the money maker or is injured or disabled as a result of the accident, you are then put in a very complicated situation of being left to wonder how you and your family would get by. Which is why, kids,
And adults.
road safety is important and you should always wear your seatbelt.